All right. Let's start looking at this. Is this paused? No, it is not. All right. So we're gonna go through the. Oh, hey, that was like 11 minutes ago. We're gonna go through a quick audio check while this is all going on, and I'd like to say hello to all the folks in the chat. Ba, 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 ba. It sounds like everything is working properly. Everything's green on my end. Who do we have in the chat right now? I've already seen Durian. Sound off if you're in here. Hmm. Share key. Gonna share this with the beholders in Discord. That's been super useful. Just being able to say hello to people who I have some kind of familiarity with, folks who like my channel, folks who I know like my channel. Come, hey, come look at this stuff. We're live. Come say hi. And we'll put it in Aaron's Discord as well. Buzz, come say hi. Cool. Under a separate window. We're also going to be playing around with two different windows today to see how that works out. I had finally hooked up, because I have a new desk, I can finally hook up my, let's see here. I can finally hook up my drawing tablet once more. I got it calibrated and everything, and I think it'll be pretty handy for taking notes during the stream, so we'll be experimenting with that a little bit. Later this week, you'll start seeing stream highlights or specific subject matters basically get the upload treatment. Let's see here. And yeah, all right, so I can take this out of my ear now because I've confirmed already that everything is working as intended. No input signal. That sounds like BS to me. Seems ridiculous, even. Okay. Aha. All right. Think she's active? Nope. That's a weird. I do not have an explanation for that. Actually, you know what? It's probably something to do with OBS itself, which means much I can actually do about it. Not that I'm too worried. Hmm. All right, so we got a few things on the docket while I fix this thing up. What do you folks want to talk about first? We have either this a short review of a section of this video. It's not going to be like the tree and monk thing, where we went through his entire video pretty much and criticized and critiqued it. It's not going to be like, yeah, it's just going to be a small section of this video that's specifically dedicated to the Druid and Wild Shape. Just to go over things, strike down a few amateur design takes is how we're going to phrase this to keep it all polite. We also have a little bit of we have a discussion about the upcoming content on the channel to have, and then what else did I put here? We could go over some of last week's videos, like the Tree and Monk video, like the Weight and Gold Pieces video. I know there were actually probably Weight and Gold Pieces had more questions, had more comments about little deviations or disagreements. Probably more so than any other video, I would say since the one-to-one time video, which was my first actual video. So that's the competition right now. What do you folks want to talk about first? Mm. Okay, Six of Swords says vote for weight in gold pieces. Input signal. I'm gonna switch these to my headphones just to make sure that we have everything in check. What are you having an issue with here? Nothing. It doesn't look like it. All right. So, Six of Swords said, let's talk about the weight and gold pieces video. We're going to go to do that in just a second. In fact, let's jump right over to it. I think I could just slide over to my channel. We have the weight and gold pieces. There's the actual live stream. Videos. Weight and gold pieces. All.
Once I ever...
Yeah, there we go. This quickly. I tend to go back and watch my own videos to try to see if there's anything I can go over. Stream keeps reaching the end of the run length for me. What do you mean by that? Are we going too long, my friend? That's fine. This is probably going to be distinctly shorter than most of the other stuff. Most of the other streams that we've had so far. So yeah, looking at weight and gold pieces, it did not get as many views as I was hoping, and this has been a little bit of a pattern for the last, I would say, 4. The last 4 videos that we did have not been getting as much views. I think this is a combination of a few different factors, but we're going to get to that a little bit later, because right now we're just talking about the video. It got 130 views. It did have a pretty good impressions click-through rate. I was happy about that. But it seems like this is mostly just the viewers of my channel checking this out, rather than a lot of new folks coming in. And like I said, there was a lot of engagement on this video. I don't think I got to everything. I don't think I got to all the questions, comments, and concerns. Six of Swords, like, I don't think I saw a comment from you. Did you have, what did you think of the video? Was there anything about it that you thought either would or would not fit in your games, and why? Same goes for anybody watching, of course. So let's see, we have Bonbon. Oh, damn, I don't think that they're going to be here for this. Yeah, I'll be bet. Damn, that sucks. Okay, so Bonbon said, I still don't understand it too well. Not that I mind taking a break during the game to check on rules or do some maths. I still do not understand how I can easily come up with weights for finished items, like a sword, compared to crafting materials. That's a good... So there's 2 interpretations of this person's question that I have. And I think both of them make sense. And maybe I should answer both of them. We'll see. I'm going to take a drink of water first. We're going to make sure we're not going to struggle from the issues of other streams where I start dying towards the end. Okay, so Bonbon said, they don't understand how they can easily come up with weights for finished items like a sword compared to crafting materials. There's, like I said, there's 2 interpretations of this. One is that they have an easy time coming up with weights for dedicated materials that you could expect to find, for instance, in the player's handbook or in the DMG. But crafting materials pose an issue to them, right? This is the issue that they're having. The alternative explanation is that they have an easy time coming up with weights for crafting materials, but they don't understand how to do the same for finished items. The latter explanation is probably easier to get to. The latter explanation is this person does have an easy time with crafting materials, so we won't address that for the moment, but they have an issue coming up with weights for finished items. Well, when it comes to weights with finished items, like you would just look in the equipment section. You would just look in your player's handbook, even in modern games, anything that has a weight, even certain splat books that I've done that had equipment sections, Astral Tides has, in fact, a free equipment section that anybody can access called Masterwork Gear of the Realms. If you look it up on Drive Through RPG, you can find Masterwork Gear of the Realms. Look for Ash of Creativity. You'll see James Streisand, which is of course my name, on the author list, and on the artist list. I think I'm listed as an artist as well on Drive Through RPG. I did a lot of that's back when I was doing a lot of motion graphic software work, just doing renders every single day, trying to improve with limited results. It produced a lot of really neat explosions of color and probably about 2 dozen pieces out of the 2,400 that I made that I actually liked, or well, not just liked, but loved, considered real art. So back to back to Bonbon's question. So if you're having issues with the weights for finished, quote unquote, finished items, then you really should just look at the equipment tables in either your player's handbook or your DMG, whichever your particular game has them in. Adjust hand massage the numbers by bulk, like an anvil is going to have a weight that's represented by more than just its weight because it's an anvil. It's very difficult to carry around. So that's going to influence the weight in gold pieces, just like Gary did. And then multiply the result by 10. So if an anvil has a weight of 50 pounds, but it's not just 50 pounds, it's this incredibly dense, localized set of material that needs to be counterbalanced on the rest of your person, or maybe just carried out in front of you. You could probably get away with doubling the weight before you actually multiply it in gold pieces. And so that would net you a result of probably like I don't know how much a real anvil weighs in real life, but if you were to take my recommendation, multiplying the anvil's weight by 2 to account for bulk, basically say it's twice as bulky as it is heavy, and then it adjusts the weight for weight in gold pieces, you come up with about 1,000 gold pieces worth of weight. The anvil's weight in gold pieces is 1,000. And that's interesting because that represents, I think, about 2/3 of a normal human's carrying capacity in AD&D. The recommendation back then is I probably shouldn't bring it up here. Yeah, I probably shouldn't bring it up here just on screen. Well, maybe. Actually, I think you get away with that on stream going through the books. I don't think that YouTube, I don't think anybody copyright strikes you for that. Maybe we'll go back to it. So you would just say an anvil probably has about 2/3 of the average human's carrying capacity. And that sounds about right to me. It sounds about right to me that an anvil is going to keep you from carrying almost from mostly anything else. You might have some armor on, you might have a sword with you, you might have to take your armor off depending on how normally heavy it is. That probably tracks to me. Six of Swords says, I'm not sure how I could use it in my Pathfinder games, but I am thinking it through. I really like the rule though. Well, I'm happy to hear it, and I think that tracks. It seems weird for modern games because one, we usually don't use encumbrance. The people who do use encumbrance are usually using a slot system, so it's a little bit asymmetrical to the rest of this. And the actual measurement of individual pounds is not used by and large. Even though it's provided, it's not tracked. Managing bulk is a little bit more important than managing weight, which makes sense from a lot of different perspectives. That's fine. But the value of the rule today to us is mostly in two places. It's mostly in crafting, and it's mostly in those early levels where you're mostly managing. You have the solution for dealing with extra weight. The problem is usually not. I keep saying usually. Defiant is rubbing off on me. The question is usually not whether or not you can bring everything with you. It's if it's paid attention to, the question is how. And of course, like I gave the example I gave in the video is if you're a good DM, if you're a good player, you recommend to everybody else, hey, we really can't go out without this other essential piece of equipment. We have a few choices for those essential pieces of equipment. But that's the deal. That's what we have to go with. Sip my coffee. Barry in the Sleepy says it's very helpful to consider the value of works of art, e.g., a marble and onyx chess set, which sounds frankly magical and awesome. But that would be the sort of thing that you would look at and expect, oh, this has a very small weight class, but we're going to increase its value for XYZ. And maybe if we use it as the ingredients to a magic item, it's going to count as normally it's 20x its weight in gold pieces, this onyx and marble chess set. Okay? But we can also go then to say, hey, this counts as double its normal value, so 40x its weight in gold pieces, for the purpose of crafting specific classes of magic items. This is why whenever I'm doing a rules investigation on something that was old, whenever I'm doing something in the Rules You Miss series, what I usually try to do, and I think I've had a pretty consistent success rate with this, right? Whenever we do this, whenever I make a video like this, I try to insert some additional value via like an alternative history. So if we go over to something like crafting, I end up saying, oh, here's this way in which crafting would have evolved differently across the hobby. Crafting would have evolved differently across the hobby if we still had this system, because weight and gold pieces would start functioning into how we consider how to craft items. We would probably do it by weight and then have value adjustments there afterwards. And it's a lot easier to manage, especially when I do things like when I'm in Chilmas Valley. Go to my. Nope, that's Drive-Thru RPG page, but I'm not looking for the Drive-Thru RPG page. I'm looking for the actual document. Share doc, perfect. Let's scroll down to, we're going to scroll past the aberrations, because that's a little bit more difficult. Ah, here we are. So if I were to scroll in here, I would say something, we do this in Chilmas Valley, the lunar hearts are considered 10 times as valuable when crafting items with lunar influence. Lunar heart there's also that other fun stuff. Oh, I didn't even remember that we came up with this. A lunar heart may be crushed at night to influence the appearance of the moon. The local hex or province is either bathed under the light of a full moon or goes dark as if under a new moon chosen by the user. That's actually really cool. Hello, Dragon Pulp, and hello, Muktuk. Very nice to see you both. Muktuk says he's running Axe, which uses slightly vague stones, but due to VTT issues, what did that say? Due to VTT issues, we're tracking weight and coins, so the video helped a few things click for me. Hey, that's awesome. I mean, that's why, going back to my earlier point, whenever I always try to include these alternative histories, because I'm fundamentally, whenever I'm making a video like this, realistically speaking, I'm always picking out a rule that I recommend you use today, right? So if I'm recommending you use this, I don't mean just paste it in your game without anything else. I also mean paste other cool things that I think would have evolved or shaped themselves naturally in the hobby, had this rule still been used, had this rule survived past 3rd edition. Actually, did it survive into 2nd edition? I don't know. It might not have. I should get more familiar with. No, I shouldn't get more familiar with 2nd edition. I think I already have it. I think I already have my favorite old school game. I really don't need another one. Hello to Joshua Kanapi. Kanapki. Kanapki. That sounds about right. That sounds phonetically correct. I don't want you to just port these things wholesale, not because I think that they're bad rules, but because I think there's other cool things that would have evolved in the hobby had these rules stuck around. And I also want you to include those other cool things. So that's why I always include them. That's why I always just try to discuss them in these Rules You Miss series. I think it's really valuable for folks. Oh, reconnection successful. Let me make sure everything is back. Uh-huh. I think everything is back. It is time for me to yell at Spectrum once more. They disconnected me. They disconnected me while I was playing Overwatch. God, they were so. Come on, guys. My poor comp ratings are suffering as a result of literally just goodness, goodness, goodness. Kanopki. Okay, so Kanapki. No, I think it's Kanopki. Yeah, classic Spectrum. I got a Spectrum for you. My crippling lack of social skills. Damn it. I've been banned from Dave and Buster's. All right, so, Muck Talk. Yeah, we had all those discussions. Cool. Got through all those comments. Anyways, what I was saying was that Bonbon had a hypothetical second question due to their lexical ambiguity here. If you're having trouble determining the value of, determining the weight for crafting materials, believe it or not, this is also pretty simple. Consider if you start with the remember, something I mentioned in here in the video was that you could backtrack the weight of an item from its total value divided by its number of units. That seems a little might seem a little confusing, but consider the value of a dragon heart. If you determine through whatever means that the value of a dragon heart is let's say the value of a dragon heart for a young, we'll say a young green dragon is 3,000 gold pieces. All right? The only value you have to then plug in and then hand massage as you wish is its value multiplier. If you want to work backwards to get the weights of crafting materials, I think the easiest way of doing, or not necessarily the easiest way of doing it, but the one that ensures your specific pipeline of how crafting and encumbrance and gold pieces interact with one another, the commerce side of the game is all solid. I think the best way to do it is to work backwards from starting with a value and then working backwards with the value multiplier. You divide it by the multiplier, and that's how you get the weight. So if I say that 3,000, okay, it's 3,000 gold. Yeah, screw it. We'll say 3,000 gold pieces. We'll say that the gold multiplier is normally like it's worth. Yeah, we'll say that the gold multiplier is like 2x. So normally a dragon heart is worth 2x its weight in gold. From there, you can probably say, aha, it's worth, we'll say that the dragon heart weighs about 1,500 gold pieces worth. Does that all make sense? I would draw it out for us here, but currently my tablet is being a little annoying. Maybe I just use Inkscape anyway. Maybe I just open that up. Maybe we play around and break the rules. All right, so does all that make sense to folks right now? I think it does. There's a bunch of other comments like, yeah, we'll just do new document. That's fine. Derek agreed. There was a lot of discussion of slots. Like, a lot of discussion of slots. How many of you folks in the chat use the slot-based System, just put a 1 in the chat if you use slot-based encumbrance. Put a 2 if you don't track encumbrance at all. And we'll switch over to a window capture here. Yep. Step 34, delete your internet history. Let's see here. Determine, so it's, yeah, work backwards multiplier. Step 1, determine the final value. Step 2, determine multiplier. Step 3, divide final value by multiplier. And the result equals item weight. Sorry, item encumbrance. The reason I use encumbrance instead of weight precisely is because, once again, it takes into account the bulk of the item. How difficult the real thing that we're trying to get at is how difficult Joshua. All right, Joshua, you're getting IP banned because you don't know how to follow direction. No, that would be mean. Turian the Sleepy says they've never done it by slots. Hmm. Yeah, so the result equals item encumbrance. Once again, it's not just about the weight. I think the thing that we really care about at the end of the day is how difficult is this to carry. And that is, as Gygax, peace be upon him, correctly identified, was the issue was a mixture of how heavy something was with how much its bulk interfered with like your physical capacity to wrap your arms around it. A couch might be relatively light, but if a couch is like huge and double your size, you're going to have difficulty carrying it up a 3-story building. 3 flights of stairs, I should say. Not to imply that you're like Spider-Man crawling along the side of it, trailing a couch behind you. Vertical ascent. All right, so that is our cool. All right, so there's that. I think that's all the questions. I think Jack Ginsberry doesn't really work while you're playing because of all the math you have to do. Yeah, I think he had a follow-up. GP is ideal, of course. It links well, speed, time, and distance. That's all cool. Yeah. Sometimes people don't like discussing this because of the amount of time it takes at the table. I think it's okay to fit something like I really do think it's okay to fit like 10 minutes of game time into determining this stuff, especially as you're exiting the dungeon. I think it influences if you plan or if there is any natural chance that an encounter is going to spring itself upon your players on the way back. I think it is probably worth examining. Should I have my camera on for this? I'll probably start doing cameras in future streams. Either that or maybe I'll start VTubing. Who knows? But yeah. Yeah, okay. So if there's any kind of encounter that plans itself on springing itself on top of your players on the way back from a dungeon, for instance, I think it's critical that you do a little bit of evaluation on stuff like weight. Because modifying the encounters is how we make this stuff relevant to modern games. If you're playing Pathfinder, if you're playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if you're playing 4th Edition, if you're playing Lancer, probably not Lancer. No, I don't have it in there. We could ignore Lancer in this example. Or if you're playing a fake game like 5th Edition, you can probably it's important that you go through this stuff. That's my personal judgment. Joshua Kanopke says, I've switched to a Conan 2D20 style. That's Modifius. Modifius 2D20, I think. Style of keeping track of ammunition and food within reason. Usually only keep track of things with real weight. Yeah, that's understandable. Hey, why are you ripping up that carpet over there? We got a cat. We got a cat. Maelstrom. 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 Yeah, you should go to bed. You absolutely should go to bed, because you're getting silly. Just tearing up the carpet over there. Okay, so that's topic one closed out, unless anybody has any other questions or comments. We have two other things to discuss today. One is making fun of this guy. No, providing reasoned, polite critique of this fellow right here, and the other fellow who looks exactly like him on the other side. And the other topic that we have to discuss is upcoming channel content. As it's, if you guys, yeah. Alright, so you guys decide, are we doing upcoming channel content, or are we providing reasoned, polite critique of this fellow? I'm going to go turn my fan off to make sure we have minimized background audio. I'll probably go with the, I'm inclined, if nobody has a specific preference, I think I'm going to make fun of, well, no, provide reasoned, polite critique of Jeremy Crawford and the person who looks just like him. Ah, yes, okay. I'll simply drag this out here. Can I grab it again? Ooh, I can. Delicious. In fact, maybe I'll leave it down here. I don't show anybody my URL, my current URL for obvious security purposes. Not that I care all that much. Future any other ways, unnatural reason critique. Yeah, all right. Everybody is satisfied with this. And it'll lead into our discussion of upcoming channel content anyways. So I'm going to find a good starting point for us, which I think is probably back here. I think they just get to it. We'll do a 1.25, not get everything, let's not get too crazy. And yeah, so there's a few different discussions that they're going through here. We're only going through the first section of this discussion here, where they're talking about the Druid and Paladin feedback that they've seen online as they cope. This entire stream, I imagine, is probably a whole lot of copium. But the first section specifically is just copium. They're discussing particularly the Druid, which is where we're going to focus on because I made a very scathing video on the Druid from 1D&D, and I think it's time that we follow up with Mr. Crawford and Todd Kimbrick.
Feedback as well, right?
Yes, yeah, we've been not only seeing a lot of lively discussion online about the current Unearthed Arcana that focuses on druids and paladins, but also our team has been studying the feedback that we're getting on the previous Unearthed Arcanas.
We've seen some discussion about Wild Shape. What kind of discussion are we seeing there?
So the discussion on Wild Shape has been very passionate.
Yes.
No, not passionate, Jeremy. It's been terrible. Near universal decrying from anybody who actually plays druids, and sometimes meek, what would you say, ineffectual praise, or passive acceptance rather, from folks who were never interested in the druid, found the core conceit of the druid turning into specific animals a little bit unlikable, and who frankly have no business, no place being included in its feedback whatsoever. Saying that they now might consider playing a druid. Druid class will always be incomplete until we get Wicker Man rules. That is a reference I do not understand. I'm gonna have to request that you elucidate. Enlighten me. Let's see here. Joshua Kanopke says, I hate the general stat blocks. I much prefer choosing specific creatures, although I was a fan of the old 3.5 UA aspects of nature option. That reminds me of the druids from the Malzahn series, who weren't really druids. They were just different classes. They were shapeshifters, and there were two major classes of shapeshifters. One was people who formed themselves into a specific animal, and the other one was people who formed themselves into basically a swarm of tiny animals. And they would usually be rats, they would be flies, they would be like giant wasps, which were horrifying. Giant wasps, like giant versions of our giant wasps or giant hornets. The druids used to make human sacrifices by burning people in giant wicker men. You know, the ransack designer, I'm pretty sure the ransack designer included a specific requirement for sacrificing a humanoid per season. I've always been a huge fan of those. Always. Listen, if you've got a little bit of old gods in your class, I think you should have a little bit of old gods in your behavior. All fine. Yeah. So this chat's probably pretty much in agreement that we hate this.
And I always love to see that excitement about the game. 10 years ago in the D&D Next playtest process, we then also sent out a playtest druid that had some pre-built stat blocks that people could try out. Feedback then was also very vigorous.
Yeah, Jeremy, it's almost like you should stop doing this. It's like you should stop it. It's like you keep returning to terrible ideas for no apparent reason.
And we ended up going in another direction.
Right.
In the intervening years, a couple of years ago, we did some surveying on the 2014 Player's Handbook. And what's fascinating is one of the main pieces of feedback we got about Wild Shape was, could we have some pre-built stat blocks?
Right.
So in response to that feedback, we sure enough have then, in the latest UA, provided that as an option. The thing is, the D&D community is huge.
We're going to stop here for a moment. You did not provide pre-built stat blocks, was the key. You provided incomplete creatures that somebody might have expected as a template, perhaps. At most, somebody might have expected a template creature to be built off of, the options that you guys released in the Unearthed Arcana playtest feedback. In fact, if I look up Druid, is it here? Ah, that sucks. Wait, no. I have another place to find that. Okay, who asked for that? The basic monster stats are in the PHP. Yeah. Why can't they just say that people hated it? It's tricky. Like I will give them a little bit of I'll give Jeremy a little bit of leeway here. If I search for a link, I'm pretty sure I'll find it. Make me the PDF. Perfect. Excellent. I could open this up here. And it should probably, yeah, there we go. Now it's up. Yeah. So the reason, why can't they just say that people disliked it? Because if they say that people disliked it, they will be met with the far more annoying folks who come out of the woodwork. You saw some of them in my video on the 1D&D Druid. In fact, let's go take a stroll down memory lane. What did we find over there? Oh, you know what? My thing is connected. It's got to be OBS that's keeping my drawing tablet from working properly. Not displaying a stream at the moment. I think it's because OBS basically takes some priority in the system from multi-streaming. So if we were to look at the Druid, stop here. This was one of the most biting criticisms I've ever released publicly in a video format. Yeah, we got a lot of really cool subscribers from this video specifically. It was great. Ba, 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 ba. Take a balance. What an uncritical and incredibly poor comparison of the playtest material to the current druid. No explanation of the fact that the current 5e druids have to constantly look up monsters in the DMG or online to find their stats, that they always need to be aware of new stat printings, that much of the power isn't part of the class, but is just part of the monsters. This means that the druid isn't actually strong. WotC just doesn't balance monsters around the idea that a player can become one regularly. No comparison of the levels they gain their particular skills in detail. No explanation of the change in scaling or the fact that in the new druid class, every wild shape will get a multi-attack at 5th level instead of having to be a specific creature for that. Like, seriously, this is just bringing the druid in line with every other class instead of forcing them to have to be this weird, like, oh my god. God, I can't do the full of it. I'm sorry. You guys, I'm sorry. I can't do the full thing. It's really bad. This person gave such nonsense, poorly thought out complaints that I then provided them with, I believe, explicit. Yeah, I provided them explicit timestamps, like weighing advanced play versus stat consolidation. That was from 7:45 on. That was a significant part of my video, despite and people do this with so that was 6 full minutes of the video. It was, I think it was about at least a quarter of my actual script. It ended up being like half of the video, but it was a quarter of my actual script. But this person said that I never addressed it at all. And what you have to understand is that there are people online who are not going to acknowledge what you've said because they want to have a specific critique of you anyways. They only have a few shots in their locker or shots in their quiver that they're able to deploy against you. There's only a few things that they know how to say, and they're going to say them regardless of whether or not they're true, because the thing they're trying to get at is they don't like you. They don't like me. They don't like me specifically because I've criticized something that's dumb, but that they sympathize with. So they feel dumb by extension. So they think I'm dumb now, and they have to, regardless of the fact that they don't have any language to properly express it, one of the many reasons why they're dumb, they have to speak anyways. And they have to shout at you anyways. So that's what Jeremy's probably afraid of here. That's why they're not going to speak properly. There's a, let's see here, channel divinity, nature, blah, 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 animal of the sky. So yeah, so these monsters are templates for what you would expect other monsters to be built on. I would never demand that a player character play one of these without, while demanding that they stop using spellcasting. You can't use spells anymore while you're doing this. You can't use, in the new 1D&D Druid, one of the things that were not brought up that I don't think has received enough criticism. Frankly, it's probably my fault for not having brought this up, but I'll do it now. Is that you can't use your other class features with the druid anymore. So like you can't use Barbarian Rage with animal form. There's no game. I'm not going to say it doesn't make sense from like a lore perspective or whatever. From a gameplay perspective, there is no reason to keep these two abilities from intersecting, especially if you're going to just absolutely nerf this into the ground. It's ridiculous. Okay, so take a drink of water or other liquid. Durian said a quick reference guide with like 30 compressed stat blocks could easily take up one page in the Druid section of the handbook. Yep. Maybe not like literally 30, but something like okay. What are the big animals that people want to wild shape into? Spider. Okay, that's one. Snake. Some variety of snake. It's two. Bear. All right. Then we have. Actually, no one. I should have. Inkscape open for this, so we're gonna bring it up. All right. So we have. What do we have? We have spider, snake, bear, wolf. Some variety therein. It's going to be a wolf. Maybe hyena. Actually, no. We'll put an asterisk next to this. We'll do hyena. It's not many people like them, or not many people use them. There's not a lot of options for them. Boar is probably in a pretty similar boat. It's an interesting animal, but doesn't really have a lot of relevance to most of the system. What else do we have? What else are we looking at? Shark? Hey, shark is pretty good. Aquatic animals, shark is probably going to encompass pretty much everything. We have big cats. So lions, tigers, panthers, jaguars, stuff like that. What else? What else do we have? Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are pretty much the only larger creatures that you're going to get. And they mostly encompass, like, in terms of higher CR, and they mostly just encompass the combat roles of, I would say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I would say about 6 of the prior 8 on this list. But they're just bigger, meatier, generally have more hit points. That's the purpose of dinos. Oh, you know what? Frogs, giant toads. Really good CR1 creatures, really good options for, I mean, just absolutely fantastic options for druids who have just gotten the Circle of the Moon. Not quite as useful for long because they immediately get access to, of just a few levels later, they get access to giant constrictors. That's pretty handy. Gators and crocs, I'm going to put that under an asterisk. Gators and crocs. Because that kind of goes under dinosaurs. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get a lot of... That's kind of dinosaurs, and that's also kind of sharks in terms of, like, their combat purpose. Dragon Pulp says, let's see here. Variety, there's a bunch of other questions we got to get to here. Hello, RED1. He says, howdy. Howdy to you. Technically, this is actually 1D&D stuff. The 5e stuff is coming soon. Eagles, you know what? All right, giant flyers. All right, so that's our giant eagles, that's our giant hawks, giant raptors, giant vultures. Creatures who can fly and are big. And that's also another thing that, like, dinosaurs, that's another thing where dinosaurs are pretty much just meteor versions of most of these other creatures. I'm forgetting my 5e are flying things verboten. No, they're not verboten at all. There's a significant, there is a terminally online section of the 5e community that hates flying creatures, cannot understand why everybody else doesn't sympathize with them about how much they hate flying creatures. Because, of course, flying creatures don't matter, generally speaking, in a dungeon. There are sections of a dungeon in which flying creatures can be handy, and they themselves can bypass a specific trap. Usually the rest of the party can't do so as well, but there's like one less person who's going to get targeted by the trap. Oh no. And dungeons generally have like 10-foot ceilings anyways. Right? But there's a section of 5e players who still just, this is unacceptable to them. Typically sometimes because of like overworld stuff. I have problems with the overworld map. God, I'm getting behind. This is the first time I'm getting behind on comments, which is awesome. Frankly, keep doing it. It would be better if your DM had to... JP Morris says, it would be better if your DM had to provide you with the monsters applicable to your class milieu, but that would be out of line with modern design trends. I might disagree with that last sentence. It's up in the air. There are specific slices of the 5e community in which that would be regarded either as the default or that would be regarded as an imposition on the player. And it would be pretty easy to meld those two groups, specifically for something that Jeremy is going to discuss in just a hot second here. And we're going to continue in one more moment because I think, yeah, there's a few other comments I want to get to. What if I don't want to bring the druid in line with other classes? What if I want classes of variable complexity? That was a dumb criticism. Yeah, no, absolutely. And in fact, that was the argument that I made in the latter half of my video. That was the argument from like 7:45 onwards. More approachable. That's the very basics of design. But I look at the one D&D druid. I know this isn't a balance pass. It's not to reduce complexity for the sake of a healthy game. You don't neuter a class to make it more approachable. That's the very basics of design. But Rube, it's just so much easier to wild shape now that all of the statistics have been melted down into three perfectly boring creatures. Let's take that argument at face value, because addressing it will lead me down the road to rude and not so neighborly behavior nasty enough to tarnish my friendly disposition. Let me instead ask y'all one simple question. Would D&D be fun if you had to run the entire game with these three creatures, just adjusting hit points and armor class into hit bonus? Alrighty. Yeah, so you guys get the idea. This person was just basically lying. God, that was still one of my favorite videos. Back to Crawford in a second. There's one last thing I'll address. JP Moore says, flying creatures are a problem for sequence breaks before everyone gets the spell at 5th level. That's actually fine. That's really, I'm serious. That's totally fine. If the thing that you're giving up, and there's going to be a little bit of all the criticisms you can make of this following statement, I probably know already, and I probably agree with, right? The caveats that you probably provide. You can have a class in AD&D like elves, functionally. Like, you can play an elf that gains access to spells and fighting ability at the same time. They can cast spells while they're wearing armor. Because they're able to, because sequence breaks are actually fun. If you're giving something up, if you're giving up some kind of, if you have an opportunity cost in your base character creation to where you're missing out on something in favor of something that lets you break the game a little bit in terms, or break the sequence, the typical sequence of acquiring specific tactical or strategic advantages, that's fine, because again, there's an opportunity cost. Yes, you are somebody who flies, but you gave up something else in return. Like, maybe you gave up dark vision. Maybe you gave up the advantage of not needing to sleep, or not needing to, or being immune from magical sleep. Maybe you, DD1, not 1E. No, I mean AD&D First Edition. So it's fine to have those sequence breaks. It's usually part of the design. It typically it helps freshen up parties. 2, you can make characters who are basically designed to Sherpa other low-level characters through the first few levels of the game. The way AD&D compensates for this is racial level limits, so your elf isn't going to go beyond, like, 7th level. That's fine. In the games that I've done, I've usually taken the opposite approach, where I say, this character can be used to Sherpa low-level characters, but you don't have access to them until your existing characters are at something like 3rd level. Right? You can't recruit an elf until your party gets to 3rd level. Or somebody in your party gets to 3rd level, has an ambassador, makes an alliance with an elven regent of some variety, or a ruler of some variety, or faction, and now they can recruit an elven lord from it. That's kind of that's their restriction, but that's in a game that also assumes that you're going to have a lot of characters. All right, so that's kind of in modern design, it's a little bit, or I would say legacy games like 5th edition, it's a little bit more difficult to work with because you're not working with those preconceptions that let you break sequences for the sake of a more fun game. Because people like Jeremy Crawford keep annihilating fun elements for the sake of bringing everything down into the same oatmeal stew.
Right.
And the community's tastes evolved. Back we got about Wild Shape was, could we have some pre-built stat blocks?
Right.
So in response to that feedback, we sure enough have then, in the latest UA, provided that as an option. The thing is, the D&D community is huge.
Right.
And the community's tastes evolve over time. And so what we're seeing right now in the conversation is the community exploring collectively,
Right.
what do we want for the druid? And so we're seeing some people who definitely do not want us to go in this new direction. And then we're also seeing people saying online, this is the direction of the druid they've always wanted. What that means for us going forward in this playtest process is as people then engage with the survey, write their feedback, rate things with their satisfaction, we then will thread the needle to create the druid that druid players really want. Because that, I mentioned that in our previous video, we're always looking for what is going to appeal to the people who love this thing most. So I encourage everyone who takes the survey, be, upfront about what you think, be constructive,
Right.
and we will study that, and whichever direction we go in, there are a few common themes.
All right, so we're going to pause it here. True the hedge. Trushy Druid. So, if I were to... He's made a couple different points here, or a few different points here, I should say. The first one I'm going to tackle is the idea that they're going to make the druid that druid players want. That's probably a lie. The feedback from people who already play druids, who are now acknowledging and observing that they're not just getting a scale back in terms of power. They're not just being brought down to something that's a little bit more manageable, to where the system is a little bit more prepared to deal with a shapeshifter class. They're getting nerfed into the ground, such that not only would they never play this, but probably even the people who say that this appeals to them would only play through it once, and kill it for the rest of their table. Especially given that the current the one D&D druid, the D and Done druid, the D&D killer druid, their class features mostly focus on wild shape. It's the vast majority of their class features. So even other druid circles are going to be by default gimped. Jeremy is going to have to, if he maintains the current direction of the druid, Unearthed Arcana that he already released, he's going to have to keep the degree to which he's going to have to keep his foot on the gas is insane to fix it. If he wants the Circle of Stars, the Circle of Wildfire, the Circle of the Moon to not suck, he's built all this work for himself that Jeremy Crawford, and this is not intended to be insulting, I'm sorry. It's just, when somebody makes this many amateur design mistakes, this person would get fired from even the worst video game company you could imagine in 2 weeks. 2 months, if we're being generous, but 2 weeks more likely. If they even made it in. He's not going to be able to deal with it. He's not going to be able to keep up with it. One of the other things that Jeremy brought up is how big the D&D community is. I have a favorite analogy of mine that I've used to elucidate, explain this particular dynamic between the tabletop community, really writ large, but also D&D especially. Menu. Let's see here. What if I go to images? I'm gonna open an image, a new tab. Okay. We're just gonna straight up download this. No. No. Aha. Perfection. What are we looking at? Downloads. Distract yourself for a moment, folks. Perfect. That work? Yes, it appears to. Nope. What? What in the actual hell? I just want to draw a circle without being interfered with. Okay, that'll do well. Fine. Fine. Okay, let me look at. Oh, JP Morris has added a ton of interesting details. AD&D has a lot more moving parts. Elves won't serve men, and men don't like serving elves. Practical use of henchmen is limited harshly by player skill, but Overland, a fighting man, is capable of leading 20 men per level. Yes, with a 40% bump to morale for being lawful good, human, and not a cheapskate. There's a lot of potential in leading people through the dark ride, but now they're taking away the tools we have to make it interesting. Yep. Okay, so with regards to the D&D community, there are people who like mechanics, okay? There are people who like campaign and matchmaking in Halo. Now, because campaign and matchmaking in Halo are interesting, have a naturally, we could say, cinematic quality to them, a new group of people showed up here who like theater mode in Halo. This thing over here, campaign and matchmaking, like I said, have a natural cinematic quality to them. The way things move in Halo are attractive to the eyes. The way that vehicles are blown about by grenades, other vehicles, other explosive ordnance, the abilities of the players or equipment of the players makes for an interesting scene. And so people who are naturally attracted to this mode come in. And the game is better for it. It's neat that we have these people here, okay? It's fun. They can teach us interesting things about why they can, theoretically, teach us things about why these two up here appeal to us. Because maybe they have some additional language that we don't have. We mostly focus on the mechanics. They have language to express the aesthetic of the game and why it appeals to them. The problem is, these people down here do not exist without these people up here. Zoom in a little bit. Everybody understand what I'm saying right now? If you like theater, that's cool. But you wouldn't like theater without the existence of people who like this and a game that was built for them. Because the game was built mechanically to be fun, to be attractive, to be interesting. Without these people, there is no this. With these people do not, the theater people do not produce the campaign and matchmaking people. The campaign and matchmaking people produce the theater people. Because the theater people don't know anything about the mechanics. You can coincidentally have mechanics for campaign and matchmaking, which are both mechanically fun and, by nearly sheer coincidence, also have a cinematic quality to them, thus making a space for these people down here. But these people down here know nothing about these people up here. There is no crossover. There's none. They don't belong. They exist as a byproduct of somebody else. I shouldn't say they don't belong. They don't belong in the discussion. Oh no! Damn, I'm sorry, folks. All right, so my lovely little graph here went unnoticed by everybody. Terrible. Terrible, unbelievable, unprofessional even. So I'll just run through it quickly again. There's people up here who like these mechanics. They like the mechanics of the game. And because this is coincidentally interesting, it produced people who like this, or brought people who like this naturally to the table of Halo. But the mechanics of the game cannot be inferred by the theater people. They don't know how to do it. The mechanics of the game can produce theater people. The mechanics players, the people who like the mechanics, can accidentally make cool cinematic scenes, cinematic gameplay that appeals to the theater people. But the theater people cannot reproduce this effect to produce campaign and matchmaking people. Does that track? Everybody understand? You don't fit in here. Okay, well, make your own thing. Oh no, you don't fit in here. Pretty much. Why are you excluding us? Now, the problem often comes in because theater people sometimes are both, people are complex. Sometimes the campaign and matchmaking people are also theater people. Sometimes the theater people are also matchmaking people, but not campaign people. And any other combination therein that you can think of, okay? That's fine. That's fine. People are complex, so it muddies the discussion a little bit, but it muddies the discussion in a way that produce extra mechanics and extra points of value. Provided you get past the disclaimers and the caveats of, well, I'm a theater person and I also like the mechanics. Okay, all right, that's fine. No, that's cool. But what you have to do is recognize that the primacy of the game, lies in, how would I say this? Mechanics and narrative are a feedback loop, all right? This statement, we're going to write down a bunch of true statements. So this is number one. Mechanics and narrative are a feedback loop, which is to say, mechanics and narrative inform one another. This is also a true statement. That's totally fine. However, mechanics are the prime mover for games. Without mechanics, games don't exist. Without mechanics, the narrative doesn't exist. And then we'll have an asterisk there inside the context of the game. All right, everything tracks so far. Does this seem true to everybody? And following up with my main statement here, while it is true that mechanics can be informed by narrative, it does not. Narrative still depends on mechanics to properly exist and inform the game. I was having a discussion in Aaron the Pedantic server not too long ago with particulars, I think it was, discussing whether or not you consider the game or the narrative fiction to be sort of to hold primacy, to be the thing that the game really rests upon. Is it the mechanics or is it the implied setting? And it's not sufficient to say both, because one, that's boring. Two, it's not quite fence sitting, but it's an insufficient explanation of which one should be placed first, how do you adjudicate them, blah, blah, blah. With these statements here, I feel like I've properly identified what is most important. drag this down here. Cool. Yeah, mechanics and narrative are a feedback loop, so we understand that these inform one another, but mechanics still have primacy. You don't have the narrative without the mechanics first. Without the narrative doesn't even have a framework to inform your referee decisions, like saying, okay, does a fireball explode underwater? What do you think, guys? Does a fireball work underwater? Just put a 1 in the chat if you think yes, 2 in the chat if you think no. All right, we have some people saying yes. Yes, it does. Yes. Okay. That's fine. I normally say no. I normally say no because fire damage is halved underwater. And from there, I can reasonably say, well, maybe it doesn't always work underwater. Maybe fire is naturally doused by water. That's fine. That's understandable. But if I really wanted to, I could also justify the idea that a fireball does kind of work underwater. I could say that it superheats the air around it. It basically works like a fireball that explodes underwater, works like a depth charge. It's magical. So it's not like I'm just pouring oil under a. We all know that I can't light a torch underwater. That's perfectly fine. None of the people who say that a fireball can work underwater would say that you can light a torch underwater. They would not say that you could light a lamp underwater. They wouldn't say that you could use a tinderbox underwater. So if they say that there is, if we're being charitable, and I think appropriately so, to people who say that a fireball could work underwater, there must be some kind of extraneous reason behind it that doesn't interact with the normal mechanics of how water interacts with fire. And that difference for you guys, you're already mentioning it in the chat. Joshua Konopke says it's still magic and will have some effect because of that. Yeah, that's a perfectly reasonable explanation. In fact, given the fact that the rules state in something like 5th edition, by the way, that you are resistant to fire damage while you're underwater, we can presume that that any kind of mechanical guard or issue with this mechanical interaction has already been put in place. We already have our safeguard for things working properly. Fantastic. No, that's really fantastic. That's excellent. All right, what else do we have in terms of questions? Dorian the Sleepy says, I'm reminded of the old PC RPGs like Ultima that mix lore and rules into a narrative, and kind of do see that in D&D here and there, more as I read older books. Yeah. Now you could expect it. Like, we have the mechanical framework which produces the theater mode. Because tabletop RPGs are iterative, things that we see implied setting doesn't exist without mechanics. If it was just written out, it would just be setting. The mechanics, the reason we call it implied setting is because the mechanics give us some kind of clues into how the world must work. Certain shared features, regardless of what kind of world or campaign anybody is running, even if they don't share our opinion, that all of these should be interchangeable. You should be able to take characters to other campaigns that your buddies are running. They shouldn't have to have, it shouldn't be too convoluted to do this. Fine. That, that there's certain things in the world that are going to be shared between all these campaigns. They work the same. Okay? Vancium magic works a specific way in AD&D. Fine. That says something about all magic users need to go out and find spells if they want to acquire more knowledge and magical power. Okay? That says something about wizards in the world. It makes sense. Ah, okay. So I think that's mostly my rant on that. I don't think that did Jeremy say anything else that I was particularly offended by?
Community exploring collectively
Right.
what do we want for the druid. And so we're seeing some people who definitely do not want us to go in this new direction. And then we're also seeing people saying online, this is the direction of the druid they've always wanted. What that means for us going forward in this playtest process is as people then engage with the survey, write their feedback, rate things with their satisfaction, we then will thread the needle to create the druid that druid players really want. Because that, I mentioned that in our previous video, we're always looking for what is going to appeal to the people who love this thing most. So I encourage.
All right, so the thing that appealed to druid players the most, the core conceit of the class, was that they basically got to swap out their character sheet for a few hours at the table and a few hours in game. They didn't like how 5th edition works by and large. They found it appealing that finally they could, because 5th edition was so light, both on advancement, your class levels do not offer you much, your gold does not give you much to do, and you do not acquire character changing items nearly at all. If you're only going to get a +1 sword at something like 5th level out of a campaign that goes from 1st to 7th level, you spend the majority of that campaign not changing or deviating from whatever your core character class is. AD&D, the early games could get away with having so little stuff for your characters, and I would argue, I'm still inclined to think that maybe AD&D compares pretty well to how often your character changes or what your character has access to when compared to 5th edition, but I need to like make a video on that. I need to fully investigate that subject. Cuz it like you can charge and you can set for charge in things like AD&D. In 5th edition, one of those things you can only do with a feat, the other is not even addressed in the entire 8 years the game has been out or more. Right? So what appealed to druids was I don't get to change my character at all in this game, but here is one single character class whose core conceit, especially if I go with the proper choice, at least out of the player's handbook for a druid, if I choose the Circle of the Moon, I get to change my character sheet all the time. And all I have to do is have a vague passing familiarity with an incredibly short list of creatures, an incredibly short list of creatures that will actually be combat effective. And it's pretty easy to tell which are which. Oh, the giant constrictor has 60 hit points. I should pick that. Not a terribly difficult decision. Not difficult to play either. You just look over from your character sheet to a different sheet. It takes like 2 seconds. And the game made it pretty easy to do this because you didn't have to worry about most carryover damage. Red One responds to an earlier discussion we were having, says sorcery supersedes science. Yes! Perfectly reasonable interpretation. It is informed because you have sorcery in the game, because you have mechanics that imply the natural consequences of sorcery and dictate how they function in the world, you are then able to use the implied setting to make certain judgment calls about how the game is then going to work. But it starts with the mechanics. Any influence... I should write this down. I'm going to write this down. I am going to write this down. Okay. So. No! Ah! My Hitscape just died on me. It just crashed. Betrayal. Since we're talking of Halo. Oh, well. All right, boys. Here's hoping I didn't forget what I was just going to say. Was it influence? Implied setting can't influence referee decisions until the mechanics produce an implied setting. I think I got it. I think I got it. Is the stream still on, by the way? That crash has me nervous. Let's see here. We got a whole bunch of comments. We're gonna wrap up the Druid discussion and follow up with something I think fun. Okay, so cool. So Joshua Konopke said, I started with the red box back in 82, rolled through all iteration 6, except for too much like MMORPG for my taste. Joshua, you are wrong. Go back and play 4th edition. It is better than 5th edition. 5th edition is more like an MMO in terms of construction. Tabletop RPGs, and this is something I've been discussing with Jeffrey Johnson, by the way, who's now in the chat. Hello, buddy. I have some updates on the audiobook deal. And I'm waiting, actually, specifically on Neil to get back to me. We've been going back and forth over the past 2 days. I don't know if he got back to me today. But fun things are happening. Your boy Rube is going to be producing audiobooks. For whom and how soon, that is the question. Cool. But yes, so you need to go back and play 4th edition. It is the only pulpy WotC game that has been developed. You just have to ignore the presentation. I know that presentation is part of design. I know this is a huge ask. You have to ignore the presentation and some would call the overly mechanical presentation and just imagine what they're presenting in your mind. And it's so much fun. Just use Monster Manual 3 enemies, says JP Morris. I would agree with that. I think 4th edition is the only game that got better with age. 4th edition is the only game that got better in its development with Splatbooks. I should just say with Splatbooks. Actually, you know what? 5th edition got a little better with Splatbooks. It did get a little bit better with 5th edition. Yeah, 5th edition Splatbooks did make it better. Tasha's, I know a lot of people complain about that. No, it made the game better. Tasha's D5e is better than Player's Handbook 5e. I'll be firm on that. So Jeffrey Johnson is the person who gave me the term implied setting. Says Traveler character generation implies many things about the universe the people find out, not by reading lame source books, but by playing brief solitaire games. Yes. Yep, it is stuff implied by gameplay. Let's see here. Yeah, so I think that's all the major comments. All right, so we finished all that up. A little bit of an echo in here. Check my audio again to make sure everything is still kosher, still good. Cool. Dragon Pulp says, agreed. Tasha's might have had some stronger options, not that I'm not the biggest fan of, but other things in it were a huge help to 5e. It's funny, because when I think of, like, strong options, I imagine the champion fighter in the PHB. I think of the Moon Druid in the PHB. I think a lot of the PHB options were the strongest that you were going to get in terms of the things that 5th edition cared most about, which was usually damage. But when I think about fun options, when I think about things that are fun to play, when I think about the Swarmkeeper Ranger in comparison to the Beastmaster, or when I think about the Star Druid in comparison to the, maybe not the Moon Druid, when I think about the Rune Knight in comparison to the Champion Fighter I think is just clearly stronger, but the Rune Knight is more versatile and gives the players a lot more opportunities to leverage their creativity, to leverage their connection to the world. Than the Champion Fighter is. Jeffro says games with loads of implied setting are way easier to run and even better, open to a range of spins and interpretations. I think that's why people prefer fantasy to science fiction overall. I think that's why fantasy catches on more than science fiction games do. Because in science fiction, there is a presumed adherence to certain laws of nature, even though most science fiction games are breaking them. There is a little bit, an implied contract between you and your players that somebody is not going to be exceedingly annoying and insist that one specific ruling that you made cannot occur based on some law of physics as they understand it, even though they are playing in a game with engine drives that really, realistically speaking, do break the laws of physics as we understand them today. Joshua Konofsky says, I think Xanathars and Tashas added a lot of great stuff. I'm not a fan of the changes to races, species, lineages. That's totally understandable, but races, lineages, and species had a very minimal impact on your character in 5th edition. They were mostly just stat allocation. That was pretty much it. Which is unfortunate, because I prefer games in which, if they're going to offer me different alien creatures that are in some way substantially different from humanity, I expect them to play as such. Alright, well, with that all out of the way, it's time to talk about upcoming channel content. So, if I scroll over to my channel here, our last few videos have not been doing impressively. We get a brief bump in the algorithm from the Jabberwocky, and then Grappling and Unarmed Combat, and the Druid thereafter, but the Exploration Pillar, which was a 5th edition video, Dragon Breath Weapons, which was a Rules You Missed video, and then Multiclassing, another 5th edition video, and then Weight and Gold Pieces, another Rules You Missed video, have not been doing impressively. It was mostly just these 3 videos, Jabberwocky, Grappling and Unarmed Combat, and then the Druid, that have been doing well. And the other ones have been doing probably what you would expect for a channel of my size. I don't want to do what you would expect for a channel of my size. I want to punch above my weight class like I did with these 3 videos. And I did not move the thing again. That's because OBS... Why did OBS do this? Jeez. Apologies. So with the Jabberwocky video, Grappling and Unarmed Combat, and my video on the Druid, these did great. And the other ones are doing about what you would expect for a channel of my size. Maybe even a little worse. I don't know. I don't want to do as well as you would expect for a channel of my size. I want to do better. I want these 3 videos. Again, so what we're going to be doing for the next month... we're going to be farming content, especially because, like I said, I'm getting laid off from my job at the end of the month. One of the reasons why we're doing live streams, I'm going to cut these out, I'm going to clip them, and upload them as videos so that people have, in addition to my normal weekly video essay, people are also going to have clip videos with a little bit of production to them. An intro music that has a couple of highlights that, functionally speaking, a Destiny video, if you will. Or a clip of a Destiny live stream that he uploads. Joshua Konofsky says, I love the exploration video. I really liked making it. It was fun to me. I'm sad that it didn't get as many videos. I think the Jabberwocky according to my metrics, according to all the analytics data that YouTube has given me, did well in no small part because the Jabberwocky is a specific creature. The Druid is a specific class. Multi-classing and exploration are wider gameplay mechanics. Alright? They're wider gameplay mechanics. Dragon Pulp says you could take really short clips and make them into YouTube shorts. Yes, I could. I will be doing so soon. I was talking today with a few friends about my mechanics, about the analytics. A new friend that I actually made at the coffee shop, and some projects that I was doing at my job that I'm getting laid off from. Is that even a 75 sub channel like I was working on was getting multiple thousands of views from it. And I think if I have a bunch of shorts that I upload that then get twisted into a that people can then click on. They can click on my name and see that there is a ton of long form content here, because now there is a ton of long form content. The most important D&D rule you missed one-on-one time is still one of my best videos, I think, in terms of production. So the plan is going to be, we're going to be farming 5th edition. We're going to be farming 1 D&D. There is going to be a little bit of drama content, and I promise for those of you who like my more, what would you say, intellectual, let me put on my fedora, intellectual videos, there will be a return to them soon. But I need to make sure that this channel does well and pumps up the subscriber number, partly so that more people get to enjoy videos like these. I don't know how many people go back and watch the first videos that a YouTuber makes. I think having the playlists available helps that. I think they are still displayed up here. That's private. Let's see here. Updates and previews. 5e retrospective. That's up. Shorts. Discourse. Rules you missed. There we go. At the end there. I think that I would hate for people to miss those. So we're going to farm subscribers for about the next month or two. We're going to pump up the Patreon. Patreon.com/RubeJelly. I made my first post on there in a while, because I got my first subscriber yesterday, or I think it might have been the day before, which was, what's his face? It was Durian. I'm pretty sure it was Durian, who was subscribed to my Patreon immediately. And so I immediately had to put something up. These are the downtime actions from Chilmus Valley, which was a module I kickstarted about, I think, around the end of 2020, or maybe it was 2021. It was the end of 2020 when I kickstarted Chilmus Valley. There's a bunch of downtime actions in there. You could use them in 5th edition. You can use them, I believe, in 4th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition, with a little bit of finagling for basically how the, small adjustments for how the numbers work between those different systems. But they are largely on the same core. There's a lot of fun stuff. So if I click on this, downtime, there's rules for carousing, missing from 5th edition. Crafting, also missing from 5th edition. Diplomacy, missing from 5th edition. With a bunch of different varieties, like using diplomats face-to-face, or sending letters, which is kind of fun. I think there's additional rules for spies. There are hiring rules. There are rules for meditation, which is a lot of fun. Natural acquisitions, that's where you do hunting, fishing, or foraging. Research, which I did an entire video on. You could go back and look at. I think it's in the discourse thing. And taming, which 5th edition really is missing videos, missing mechanics for. But taming creatures that you go out and find in the world. Very important for 5th edition. This document itself, there's a 0.9 version that's going to be entered into the document soon. I have not solidified my upload schedule. I'm pretty much going to be uploading 1 document per week, it looks like. Some of those documents are going to be updates. Some of those are going to be free LC, if you will, to various mechanics I've developed beforehand. So 2 or 3 years, it was more than 3 years ago at this point, I released Airships of Brachus, which was my airship system for 5th edition. We made a competing system for Pathfinder 2nd edition that never got released. So you'll see updates to Airships of Brachus, and you will see updates to the competing system in my Patreon. That's basically how I'm going to spend my time. There will be videos that, basically early versions of videos, video transcripts, what I base my scripts off of, will be appearing. And there's a bunch of different support levels. So if you just want to like toss me $3 a month, you can do that. $10 a month, 25, and then yeah, what was it? Oh, that's right. I have a 3D printer next to me. And I don't know if you folks know this. I've been a 3D modeler for about the past. I'm turning 26 in a couple of months. I'm turning 26 in a couple of months. How long has it been? I have been a 3D modeler for about 13 years. I've been a 3D modeler we're coming up on the point where I have been a 3D modeler for longer than I have not been a 3D modeler on account of I was not able to access a computer as an infant. But if I was, we'd probably be past that threshold already. All right, a couple of comments to get here. Let's see here. Could take, Dragon Pulp recommended shorts. We'll be definitely doing that. We'll be taking clips from this live stream. Jeffrey Johnson says, more videos where you take apart common bad D&D claims. Yes. I think some of those are going to make an appearance a little bit more in the live streams, and then they're going to get clipped apart and added to the video repertoire. But maybe I will make maybe I'll make some like actual video essays on specific bad claims. It's a little bit more difficult to do that because not as many people are searching those up. There's probably going to be more 5th edition and more 1D&D content, and I will work in interest for all my old school fans, or all my Broasar fans, that play into those. Like common mistake, like, okay, this 5th edition mechanic, or this 5th edition creature is bad because just compare it to AD&D. Compare it to like how much cooler this other thing was. Yeah, nobody's searching for why am I a dummy about D&D, which is sad because God, I'd be the Mr. Beast of TRPGs if they were. I'd have advice. Finally, Jeremy Crawford would see my advice. Joshua Konopke says, I tend to try to go back pretty deep into the catalogs of those I really enjoy. That's encouraging. That's encouraging. I hope people do that. And then Red One says, yeah, shorts and polls. Boost audience, I hear. I should definitely do more polls. Some of the video, I don't know if you guys remember this. Durian was here back then. I'm confident. But some of the polls I did back then were about specific channel subjects, like not channel subjects, sorry. I need to take a drink of water. Okay. Some of the polls I held, back in the channel's early days, I held a number of polls for discussing potential upcoming content. If I go to my folder here, let's see here, AI Dungeons Part 2, should warlocks be a class? The difference between thieves and rogues. Why multi-class, the real problem with talking about D&D. Improve your 5e monsters with one change. There were a few others. I think, I have a folder here called the Jelly Spellbook, where we go back and we fix 5th edition spells based off of basically earlier editions and their prior conceits. We try to update their prior conceits in earlier editions to 5th edition to make 5th edition a little bit less of a hodgepodge of fan favorites that don't really work together and aren't nearly as cool as they used to be, and the things that fans remember them from, and just try to turn it into a little bit of a real game. Just a little bit of a real game, as opposed to whatever Crawford did. So that'll be up. There'll be the occasional blog post on the Patreon, and I think that just about covers what's coming up. Last thing, and guys, type your comments, questions in now if you have them. And they can be about anything, but especially if you have recommendations for where to take the channel next, or things you would like to see. Because remember, even if I don't make a video essay about it, I could devote a half hour to it in a given live stream and then clip it and upload it as a video. And then you get to appear in it. So the other two things that I will likely be making videos about in the near future are some video games. Destiny, not the person, the game, not the streamer, the game. I have a video about the upcoming, or the recently dropped Lightfall expansion, and the first mission that I played that made me put the controller down, the proverbial controller down. I am a mouse and keyboard player. And say, okay, I need to explain what makes me mad about this first. I need to explain what makes me mad about this first. And then we can go off to something else. Why is this unpublished? Publish it. What? Baby. Where are you? Maelstrom? Maelstrom? What are you doing back there? How do I make this visible? What the hell? Yes, publish the tier. Yes! Okay. Now that's up. Alright, so going back to... Red One said, taming and battling animals, like their Monster Manual 2, like them Pokemons. Yes. Absolutely. No, listen, that's one of my favorite mechanics. I love collecting creatures in tabletop RPGs. It's one of the most fun things I can imagine doing in tabletop RPGs, because I think somebody mentioned earlier, a lot of monstrosities, they're listed in the Monster Manual, could be called just natural beasts, or could be classified as natural beasts because they're in a fantasy setting. I completely sympathize with that take. I think there's still a space for monstrosities, and I think most of the creatures in there are things that aren't quite natural, but are kind of mutants. Yeah, Dragon Pulp said this. A lot of monstrosities should be beasts in fantastical settings. I think there's still a difference between creatures which are fantastic and creatures which are mutated in some capacity. Right? Mutants, the products of sorcery, the products of mad wizards, creatures which have some way, I think even in a fantasy setting, yeah, even Hydra and Gorgon are still monstrosities. I think even in a fantasy setting, you can have creatures which have still deviated off of the norm. Which are more or less cryptids in some way. Oh my god, he's picking me up. Jeez. I love my new cat. He's a baby. I'll post pictures of him on the channel. Little snaggletooth with the lion cut. He's not a Maine Coon, but he looks like one. Like Griffin or Owlbear could be beasts, but Hydra and Gorgon are still monstrosities. Yep. And I prefer the Griffin and Owlbear being monstrosities. It's not like in Avatar or the Dragon Prince, which I believe were made by the same people. A lot of the creatures are kind of mixes of two creatures. In fact, there's a joke. There's a joke in the setting where like there's just a regular bear, and people are exclaiming, "It's like, well, you mean a platybear? You mean a platypus bear? You mean a badger bear? You mean a shark bear?" And they're like, "No, just a regular bear." With the bear in the Earth Kingdom and Avatar be a monstrosity, I think probably yes. I think it probably would. Prehistoric creatures, which were resurrected in some capacity. Right? Uh, creatures which have some kind of like prehistoric nature to them. Even if regular bears were once present in the world of Avatar, if the world of Avatar has evolved past the need for regular bears, then I think a regular bear, which was appearing for whatever reason you can imagine, is probably a monstrosity. I think I like that interpretation. Patreon.com/Rube Jelly if you're looking to get in on those. I think I'm gonna update personal requests to reflect some. If you guys want some voice lines, if you guys want some, here's something I could do for you folks. I have a very, you might have noticed, I have something of an exquisite vocal range, and it's why lots of people listen to me. If you guys have a villain or a shopkeeper or somebody that you want to leave a message to the players in your campaign, I will happily voice this. We'll add it as a benefit on the Patreon, like this. In fact, I think I could do it. Add benefit. I'm on the proper screen. Ba, 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 ba. Splat act. I think I need to create a new benefit before I can do it. That's fine. Alrighty. Well, folks, that's all I have for this fine evening. Did you folks want to chat about anything else? Did you have any other questions, comments, concerns before I head out? Once again, it's patreon.com/RubeJelly. That was such a fun stream. I really enjoyed this one. We've been going for just under 2 hours. We talked about a lot. A whole bunch of people showed up in chat, which made this really fun. Talked about, what was it? We talked about the Druid. We talked about Jeremy Crawford. We talked about some earlier videos. We talked a little bit about upcoming channel guidelines. It's really neat to me that a bunch of you showed up or stuck around for the discussion on channel guidelines or upcoming channel content because you guys were like, "Hey, I have something of like a investment in this thing growing larger and succeeding and being fun," which I'm very happy with. I'm happy that everybody is. Honestly, one of the most fun parts of running this channel is just how encouraging everybody is being. Like Jeffrey Johnson says, "Keep it up, yo." Like I should have started this probably about 2 years ago. Red 1S is 5e that bad. It is very undesigned. You can conjure real games from undesigned games, but it is hard and annoying. Dragon Pulse says, "Oh, I'm glad that you like my Ranger in the Design Dump channel." Man, alright, so that was, alright, cool, that was you. I won't refer to you as I'm just going to refer to you as Dragon Pulp now, because I don't want to refer to you with your Discord name. But it really was one of the coolest features I've ever seen for a Ranger that instantaneously made me think, this was made for a real game. Perfect. I love it. Durian's going to drop by in the Discord. That's awesome. Joshua Kanofsky says, "Good stuff, my friend. Thank you very much." And Red One said, "Yeah, is 5e that bad?" Like I said, it's an undesigned game. You can conjure up a real game from it with work, but it's difficult to do, partially because any kind of work that you spend, once you start, if you are a GM, once you have to go back in and start playing designer, it interferes with your perception of proper GMing. You start trying to automate your GMing out of the system. And vice versa. If you're a designer trying to play GM, you will try to like Jeremy Crawford. If you're somebody like Jeremy Crawford who has the responsibilities of a designer, but tries to but does so like a game master, they go back and just destroy their capacity for normal stuff because they consider, well, it's my job as the GM to present content in front of the players that they can play through. It's my job to present encounters, so they forget about rules for generating encounters, for instance. They forget about their basic responsibilities as designers because they imagine they will just fulfill those responsibilities naturally as a GM. And it is true that those specific people will probably do so. Those specific people probably will GM their responsibilities away as designers. They'll probably do it effectively. /Nick is usually the command for changing your Discord name. But the problem with that approach of GMing your design responsibilities away is that everybody else who is neither a GM nor a designer will come to this for the first time and just not have any frame of reference for what a real game looks like. Whereas D&D is something like, honestly, like an MMO. Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, message me in the chat inside the Discord. I'll handle it. I'll help you out. And yeah, so that's the deal. All right, folks. My voice is starting to get a little bit tired. I think it's about time to feed the. Coming up on when it's time to feed the cat. And I'm just down to, I think, chat in the Discord after this. Whew. God, what a good stream. It's a shame it almost went 2 hours, because that means I'm going to have a lot of stuff to go through and clip. Goodness. Who knows? Maybe I'll have somebody go through and find me something that works for a short. Say, hey, I'll give you $20 if you make a short out of this. Alrighty. Yeah, Dragon Pulp in Discord. Yeah, much easier than referring to you as Buttface. Alright, folks. I'm out of here. You all have yourselves a fantastic evening. I'll be in the chat in my Discord. I might be in voice. Who knows? In any case, I will see you folks